So that's the kind of thing in the 90s that gave birth to this around 2007. All right. So here's what I want you to do. I want to look at the first row, where we start with John 7:24. And you can use a Bible, or I have it conveniently, at least some of them for you on the back. If you want the full context, open your own Bible so you can scan, the full context. But I'm giving you a little bit of context on the back. All right. So let me read this to you. From John 7:23-24. And what I want you to listen for is Jesus saying, do judge or do not judge? We'll just start there with that question. This is what Jesus says to his opponents. Now, if a child can be circumcised on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing the whole man on the Sabbath? Stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. All right, now that might take a little bit of explanation. And this is actually my next sermon, February 1st. Something like this I'll come back to. So, Jesus' opponents have ways of not being impressed with his miracles, his signs. Now, one, concerning exorcisms. He's driving out demons. Demoniacs are saying weird things, low voices, legions of demons, and this one guy. Crazy stuff. And he drives out demons. Does anybody remember how his opponents said, not impressive, because blank? They explained away his exorcisms how? Does anyone know? What's that? You're doing it through Satan. All right, so you're driving out these lesser demons because you're the big demon. Or you got the big demon Satan in you. All right, so you're using evil to drive out evil. All right, now by the way, that's such a big, horrible statement that is actually related to the unforgivable sin, by the way. Because Jesus says, I'm doing this by the Holy Spirit, by the way, driving out demons. And if you're saying Satan's doing this, you're so upside down that it's related to the unforgivable sin. Now, I don't have time to draw that out. Now, what about healing miracles? All right, so someone's bunched over, or a woman's bleeding for years, or the blind, the deaf, the mute. All right, those are pretty impressive miracles. How did they get around that? Well, one of their arguments was, wait a second. Sometimes you do this on the Sabbath. We've seen you in a synagogue. You do this on the Sabbath. Aha, gotcha. Because if you're a miracle worker, then you wouldn't work on the Sabbath. Right? So therefore, you're not from God because you're doing your work on the Sabbath. Now, you shouldn't be impressed with that either. But that's kind of what's behind this passage. All right, so Jesus is saying, you say I can't work on the Sabbath. You know who works on the Sabbath sometimes? The priests. When they circumcise a baby on the 8th day. That's actually a pretty good argument, saying, all right, if you can do that to fulfill God's law, why can't I heal this woman who's been bound by Satan for years or whatever, okay? All right, so now that's background. Now back to what he says here. Do you hear do judge or do not judge from Jesus to his enemies? Yes. What do you mean?
Don't judge with bad motive or with bad logic, but do judge according to Scripture.
Yeah. So it's both. So first of all, stop judging by mere appearances. Oh, you're healing on the Sabbath. That's your work, so you're a worker doing something when you're not supposed to. Jesus is like, come on, give me a break. Stop judging by mere appearances. So that's the do not judge. But as Steve just said, you keep reading, make a right judgment. Do you think that's applicable to us today? Now I'm actually asking you to apply it a little bit. I mean, this is stretching a little bit beyond just our exercise here, but yeah. 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 So Michaela's saying here, mom's a nurse. She had to work on the Sabbath. And you guys really observed it the seventh day as Seventh-day Adventists. That's Saturday. But whether you're, traditional Christian, of course, is Sunday. But Seventh-day Adventist is Sunday. So either which way. Do you remember what Jesus said about that? And why Presbyterians, in our statement of faith, we say, what are you allowed to do on the Christian Sabbath? Works of mercy and necessity. And we get that from Jesus, where Jesus, when he says this, whoa, you have an ox, falls into a pit on the Sabbath. Are you going to help it out? That's a work of mercy. Or maybe, how about making food or something to do with food prep? I mean, you can do a lot of food prep the day before, but you can't do everything. It's a work of necessity. So we have said, based on Jesus, works of mercy, works of necessity. That's a right judgment, right? So Jesus is saying, make a right judgment. Don't be foolish about this. Now, next thing, and this is key. What is judgment? What does that mean to judge here? Give me a synonym for the word judge in this context. Don't use the word judge. We're looking for a synonym because I'll tell you why. We'll have at least 3 different possible synonyms for judge, and they mean different things. This is part of the problem. So just replace the word judge. It's krino. In the Greek, it's krino, but you know what that means? It means judge. Going to the Greek will not help us solve this. It's the context that will help us. Discern. I like that. All right. Discern. Am I breaking the Sabbath? Discern that. Anyone have another synonym? Assess. Good. Evaluate. Right? Now, please understand, the Bible always calls us, God always calls us to be discerning about good and evil. Right? Nowhere does it say, hey, don't worry about that. Go beyond good and evil, as some people have said. No, we don't go beyond good and evil. Instead, make a right judgment. Be careful. Be discerning. Evaluate. Assess. All right? Now let's go to number 2. This is the famous one from Matthew 7, Sermon on the Mount. Do not judge. There it is. Most famous 3 words from the Bible, maybe. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. So I want to give more of the context. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. All right, is this a do not judge or do judge? Easy question. Kind of easy. I mean, it says literally do not judge there at the beginning. Do you think this is, again, do not judge in the sense of discern, evaluate, assess? All right, you see your brother, and he's got a speck in his eye. Now, this, what do you think that's for? It's not literal physical stuff we're worried about here, right? Speck in his eye is probably something wrong with his behavior, character, sinning, right? Something like that. So, it looks like do not judge means don't call out or discern your friend's sin, your brother's sin. Let bygones be bygones. Live and let live. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this is to not discern sin, to not evaluate sin. No, Sarah's shaking her head. No? Ah.
Once you have evaluated yourself, then you are to assess your brother.
Yes. So this is one reason why the context is so helpful, right? So Jesus goes on, and he takes both a log and a speck seriously, right? It's not, forget about these categories of log, speck, sin, whatever. But it is a call to be even-handed in your judgments, even toward yourself, right? So if you call out something in your brother, watch out. You will be judged too, Jesus says. You've now made it clear to your neighbors and everyone and that you know right and wrong. You're aware of it, and yet you could be blind to your own. So, let me put this forth as a suggestion. Is he saying, yes, be discerning, but be fair, consistent, even applying it to yourself. Does that sound right? Does everyone agree with that, or any kind of additional?
Seems like he's getting into the concept of hypocrisy, right?
Uh-huh.
Where is it there?
That's right.
Judging others and not your own heart, and be guilty of the same sin.
That's right. That's right. So Jesus does take on hypocrisy a number of places. And here he does use the word, doesn't he, verse 5? Yeah, you hypocrite. Hypocrite coming from this idea of play acting. You put a mask on. And you take a role, a character. And you're not really who you look like you are, right? You hypocrites. All right. So let's go to number 3. Now, this is an interesting one, and I want you to sense the context changing here. Something's different here. 1 Corinthians 5. It is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that does not occur even among the pagans. A man has his father's wife. Now, his stepmom, second wife, mother, I don't know, but a man has his father's wife, and you are proud. Shouldn't you rather have been filled with grief and have put out of your fellowship the man who did this? Even though I am not physically present, I am with you in spirit. And I have already passed, listen to this, judgment on the one who did this, just as if I were present. When you are assembled in the name of the Lord Jesus, and I am with you in the spirit, and the power of the Lord Jesus is present, hand this man over to Satan, so that the sinful nature may be destroyed and his spirit saved on the day of the Lord. And I have this highlighted from verse 12 later in the chapter. What business is it of mine to judge those outside the church? Are you not to judge those inside? God will judge those outside. Expel the wicked man from among you. All right, so you see what I have highlighted. Is this a do judge or do not judge? Steve says, yes, both again. All right, so but this is a different point than one we've already seen. Let's go to the do not judge. Do not judge what? Fill it in for me. Those outside the church. But do judge those inside the church. All right, interesting. Now, that might confuse you a little bit. Because we said judging what we've seen so far is discerning, assessing, moral evaluation. Are we trying to say here, if someone's not inside the church, a non-Christian, that we don't evaluate morally? We kind of don't discern? Or is there a different sense of the word judge here? I'm going to tell you there is. What's the new sense for the word judge here that we haven't seen yet? All right, convict, cast judgment upon. There's an action here. Now, I could morally evaluate Steve, right? I could watch what Steve's doing, and I might assess, evaluate. I might just keep it to myself. This is going beyond that. There's action. And what is the action in this passage? The relevant action. What would we call it? Excommunication. All right? Now, that gets into church discipline, which may culminate in excommunication. And it goes like this. Somebody's in sin, they're caught. Now, somebody thinks, oh, how bad is the sin? That's the key thing. All that. Well, I don't know if we want to start ranking sins. I mean, some sins are worse than others, by the way. That's clear in the Bible, although sometimes people don't know that. But the real issue, there's a couple deeper issues for church discipline, and one of them is unrepentance. Right? Unrepentance. This guy is sleeping with his stepmom, whatever, and they're proud, and he's proud of it. All right? Can you hear him saying, freedom in Christ? I'm saved by the blood of Christ, and the body doesn't matter. Only the soul matters. All right? Don't worry about this. Don't be a stupid Puritan or whatever, He's proud of it. And so there's an unrepentant sin. And then there's another aspect of this we like to highlight, and it's a scandalous one. It's known throughout the church too, and that changes things, because if church leadership turns a blind eye towards known sin, guess what happens to that church in the long run? No one takes sin seriously. It just starts to disintegrate. And that's what happens to churches. All right? So you have those aspects, and Paul said you got to confront this. And it could lead to excommunication if it's unrepentance. And it might shock you that it says, hand this man over to Satan. Right? And it's like, kick him out of the church. And now you're into the world where Satan rules in some sense. God rules everything. But it's the world that does not confess Christ. Right? Let's see how he likes that, And it's for the purpose of rehabilitation, not punitive. Do you see the rehabilitation note? That his spirit might be saved. Right? This is not punitive, like, for instance, you steal something, and the criminal courts will say, all right, you're going to get 2 to 6 years for this. All right, boom, 2 to 6, you pay your, or a fine or whatever. It's kind of a measured, punitive retribution, retributory justice, retributive justice, something like that. Now, this is like, whoa. It's not that. We want this guy to come back. But right now, he's causing a scandal in the church, and he's unrepentant, and kick him out if you need to. Did you know, this is one reason I love teaching this lesson, because sometimes people don't think about church discipline. And a lot of church discipline happens confidentially, to be honest, right? That we don't want to say things publicly unless we have to. Matthew 18, that's the last step, right? So there's stuff that's happened during my pastorate that we don't talk about publicly. And that's right and good. Now, you want to win them over. But you see here how judging works. It's not just discerning or evaluating. It's actually doing something social to this guy, kicking him out of the church, which would include barring him from the Lord's table, the communion table, right? And that is supposed to be a real sign to this guy and to the church that this is bad, right? This guy's in a bad state. It's actually an action. Now, I always like to talk about church discipline. What you don't see is the sword here. You don't see lethal force. You don't see fines, monetary fines. You don't see physically coercive force, put him in handcuffs, put him in a jail cell. Our understanding is, you see none of that in the church. You see the power of the keys, not the power of the rod, that's given to parents, not the power of the sword, that's given to the government, according to the Bible. The power of the keys. And you might say, well, what does that mean? Well, clearly, what it means is you basically, you open the door. Through the preaching of the gospel, the invitation, come, be forgiven. You're opening the door to the kingdom of God. I mean, it's amazing that Jesus gives church leaders, starting with the apostles. I know it's always Peter, but if you read a couple chapters later, it's the apostles and all that. You're actually doing stuff to throw open the door to the kingdom of God. by preaching the gospel. And then if somebody says, oh, I believe, but they live in unrepentant sin, they cause scandal, you close the door. All right? That's what we're looking at here. But this is the limit of our power as leaders. Does not get the physical coercion, financial coercion, and certainly not lethal force. All right, so now we have a due judge, those inside the church, even an action of excommunication if needed. And that's the last thing we want to do, right? And if you think about it, how about do not judge those outside the church? It would make no sense to judge those outside the church. So imagine this. I'm walking down Easton Road. I always give this example. Let's say I'm walking down Easton Road, and there's some people talking in front of me, and they're saying horrible things. They're not just swearing, they're blaspheming, just imagine all kinds of verbal sins, threatening, I don't know. And I can stop them, I'm like, whoa. And I might morally assess, I might judge, this is sin. But I can't do what this is doing. Right? I can't say, guys, you got to stop doing that. Who are you, whatever. And they're unrepentant, and I'm like, well, whoa, I want you to know I'm the pastor of New Life Church. We don't care. We're not Christians. We don't go to your church. We don't know who you are. And guys, I'm serious here. The session might bar you from the Lord's table, and this could even go to excommunication. What's the session? What are you talking about? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So you can see the Lord saying those inside the church who say the 6 vows when somebody joins New Life, those 6 vows say, I'm following Jesus. I believe in his blood. I need it. I'm a sinner. I got it from the Bible. I didn't make it up myself. And I submit to the leadership of the church. We're all trying to follow Christ together, and that might mean keeping me accountable. At times, it's the people who say that church discipline applies to. Does that make sense? All right, let's go to number 4 here. I care very little if I am judged by you or any human court. Interesting. Now we're getting to court again. Not just discerning, not just evaluating. There looks like a judicial aspect to this. Indeed, I do not even judge myself. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. All right, therefore judge nothing before the appointed time. You see the do not judge there? Judge nothing. Do not judge, in other words, before the appointed time. Wait till the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and expose the motives of men's hearts. At that time, each will receive his praise from God. Now, this might seem like it contradicts what we just covered. Why? He brings up a court. All right, this looks like a judicial setting again, like excommunication, church discipline that we just covered. It looks like there's an action, a judicial action. All right. And then he says, do not judge anything before the appointed time. But obviously in 1 Corinthians 5, as we just read, he says, judge the immoral brother who's sleeping with his stepmom. So why does he say here, do not judge anything till the appointed time? There's something new here that we haven't quite seen before. What is it? Final judgment. That's right. We have not seen that. That's right, Steve. So wait for final judgment. But why? What also have we not seen before? Judgment of the heart. All right. So why was the sexual immorality judged? I said it was unrepentant, it was scandalous, and here's another thing I did not say. It's an undeniable overt act. Right? Same thing if I stole thousands of dollars from New Life. And that was proven. An undeniable act, right? It's not somebody trying to read my heart. You see the difference here? If somebody comes up to me and says, Mark, I think you have a love of money, and we're going to take action against you judicially, church discipline, I'll be like, whoa, how are you reading my heart there? And I hope they have evidence, right? External evidence. Listen, we've seen what you did with your expense reports, Moser. It's awful. All right, then you might have something against me. But now we're getting into just the heart motives, and this is where Paul's saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. You start pointing fingers at people's hearts and knowing what's motivating them for sure, judicially, watch out. And in fact, he said, I don't even judge my own heart. Do you hear that? He says, I don't know anything against myself. He's like, basically, I have a clean conscience right now, but I could be dead wrong. It's true. So I have to kind of say, Lord, you know my heart. Wait till the final, Let alone, how would I judge Steve's heart? So don't judge the heart. That's the do not judge here. Not just merely discerning. Motives matter. So don't hear, Jesus talks about motives and the heart all the time. They do matter. Don't read this as only external behavior counts. So Jesus challenges our piety, our walking. Well, how does he do that in the Sermon on the Mount? Just so you know what I mean. All right, you're going to give money to the church. Woohoo! Don't be like the Pharisees that blow trumpets, woo, as you're going to donate. Or you're going to fast. Don't disfigure your face and all that so people know you're fasting. It says, do it privately, and the Lord will reward you. See what that does to shaping our motives for personal piety? He's given us a plan to get rid of other external benefits for piety. People seeing your piety, that's the big one. Do it privately. Go prayer, your prayer closet. That doesn't mean we never pray corporately. Of course we will, the church. But he's saying, to purify your motivation, do it without people noticing or without getting financial remuneration or something like that. Get those other things that could cloud your motivation, get them out of there. So motives really matter, but it changes when then I start assessing yours, especially when church leadership starts assessing. We have a couple in this church, I won't say who, just because they haven't cleared it with me, but I think I could, but they were in something close to a cult in the 80s, I think, 90s. Now, not a charismatic Jim Jones kind of cult or even, a doctrinally unorthodox cult, right? That's what we think of like the Jehovah's Witnesses. Not cult in that sense. But one that had cultic tendencies, they told me like every Sunday was church discipline. Who's in, who's out this week? Wow. And to do that frequently, I bet you're reading the heart, right? You're probably not going to have objective outward evidence of sin, easily, it's going to get into the heart. And boy, the culture, that's dangerous stuff. Okay, so do not judge the heart. I got to say, again, if I had more time, as parents, one of the books Lisa and I read was Shepherding a Child's Heart. I was like, whoa, when I realized, wait a second, what am I doing? I can't judge my child's heart. This says don't judge the heart. And I had to think through that carefully. I was like, well, we are trying to reach our child's heart. We never have 100% certainty. So be careful. But the good news is, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. You want to get to the heart? See what your child says, right? See what their actions are, right? And Jesus talks about that. No one picks figs from thorn bushes and stuff. So it does come out. But you're trying to get signals of where's their heart. And that could shape when you discipline them, when you don't discipline them. You can do different things for different children. And that might sound unfair, but we found ourselves doing that because we know this children's heart was different than this one, all right? So many nuances to this. This is why I love this. All right, 5. I'm going to run out of time here. For the person who hears my words and does not keep them, I do not judge him, for I did not come to judge the world, but to save it. Now, this is not an imperative here. Jesus does not say do judge or do not judge, but we are listening to what Jesus is trying to do or not do concerning judging. And he goes on, just for a little more context. There is a judge for the one who rejects me and does not accept my words. That very word which I spoke will condemn him at the last day. Now, Jesus is saying clearly here, I do not judge. So, again, you can walk away from this. Oh, this means we're not supposed to judge too. If Jesus isn't, we aren't. What do you think judge means here? Does Jesus, let's just go to discerning, assessment, where we started. Do you think Jesus ever judged someone in the sense of calling them out, discerning evil, evaluating evil? Did Jesus ever do that? Oh, yeah. Read Matthew 23. It's so fierce what he says there, and it's all over the place. All right, so he did come to judge the world in that sense. In fact, he says, that's why I get in trouble. Because I testify that what they do is evil, right? So that's him discerning, evaluating, and then saying it, and they get ticked off, and they're going to kill him. That's what he says. So actually, he is judging in that sense. What do you think Jesus means here? He did not come to judge. Give me a synonym for judge. And it's not going to be evaluate, assess, discern. What is it here? Condemn. And let's go even further. 2, execute it. All right, now think about this. The word in Greek is similar to English. Let's say you think you might have broken criminal law. You go to a lawyer. Does that lawyer judge your actions? You're getting advice from the lawyer. In one sense, yes, the lawyer is giving you, okay, according to the law, according to what you did, they morally evaluate, they discern that was illegal or not. You could call that judging, but yeah, it's not really fully judging. Then you go to the court. And let's say you're found guilty. And there's that judge with the gavel. Now we get into something like church discipline, which we talked about. Now there's a judicial action. That's judging. And even pronouncing a sentence. That's judging. And then sometimes we reserve the word judge for what happens next. And that is the actual carrying out of the sentence. All right? Someone judge, you're receiving your judgment at that moment in the sense of punishment. So if you're getting 39 lashes back then, that's the judgment being unleashed upon you, if you will. So you notice there's different ways. And I think that last one is akin to what Jesus is saying here. In fact, the next verse, that's why I read the next verse. There is a judge for the one who rejects me and does not accept my words. It will condemn him on the last day. So as Steve said, now we're getting into final judgment, executing final judgment upon unrepentant sinners. Okay, and Jesus is saying, I didn't come to do that in my first advent. His second advent does involve judgment, right? And actually says there's a judge in that day. That's him, by the way. There's angels involved, God the Father, it matters what verse, but he does claim, those who say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not do miracles in your name? And so forth. And he'll say, go away from me. I never knew you. There's a word of judgment there given by Jesus, he's claiming. All right, so you see what this is. This is helpful, where Jesus is saying, I do not judge, not now. I came to save. In the future, there will be a judge. All right? So God will judge, but that executing of final punitive justice, Jesus did not come for 2,000 years ago. Does that make sense? I think that's really helpful. So if we think to ourselves, let's go punish the unchristian world for unbelief. What? Jesus didn't do that. All right? 6. Therefore, whoever eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord, this is communion, in an unworthy manner will be guilty of sinning against the body and blood of the Lord. A man ought to examine himself before he eats of the bread and drinks of the cup. For anyone who eats and drinks without recognizing the body of the Lord eats and drinks judgment on himself. That is why many of you are weak and sick, and a number of you have fallen asleep. But if we judged ourselves, we would not come under judgment. I thought Paul just said, 2 passages ago, 1 Corinthians 4, that was number 4 in my list. I thought he said, I don't even judge myself. And now he's saying, we need to judge ourselves so we won't come under judgment. All right, so what's different here? What do you think he means by judging ourselves when we come to the Lord's table? Steve? Examine? Examine what? Own hearts. What are you looking for in your heart? Unrepentant sin. You know? True faith. Do I look to Christ? You know? Do you know your heart perfectly, Steve? No. And that's what the point was 2 passages ago. Right? But this is a duty of ours to try, when we come to the Lord's table, to not be so flagrant and nonchalant or mechanical about coming to the Lord's table. Not supposed to do that. All right. I think I'll stop there. There's 2 more. Any thoughts or observations or questions or struggles? We have 10 minutes to converse here on any of this. Yeah, wisdom is what Matt's saying here, and it's true. There's a lot of wisdom to this whole area of judging, all of it, right? The discerning aspect, the judicial aspect, executing the judicial aspect, inside versus outside the church, outward behavior versus the heart. Right? All of this, it does. And I just felt it the most. I mean, as a leader of the church, I feel it all. I mean, certainly. But as a parent, that's when I really started feeling it. I just remember Julie Davis. If you remember Dwayne and Julie Davis, we were in a small group with them, and I just remember Julie with her kids at a certain age, and our kids are at a certain age, and she's like, every moment can be a teaching moment. You see your kids doing so many things wrong or misguided or something. She's like, every moment can be a teaching moment, a correction moment, she was exaggerating. But I just remember being with kids at that age. We didn't have terrible 2s as much as terrible 3s. And I'm just thinking, that's right. That takes wisdom of which battles to fight. And I don't know if I agree with people just, saying, hey, for every one critical word, you need 10 positive words. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with some of that advice, but there's something about that that's true. You're looking for, okay, how can I encourage them? Too. So, for me, I was like, all right, so you give a hard word to them. I always thought one of the things I want to do is not just encourage them for good things, but spend time with them, right? Doing something fun. Relationally. Show them, I'm not going to do passive aggressive with you. I'm not going to be, doing so. Let's do something together, And they can find security in that relationship quickly. That's, you can do it better than we did, I'm sure, but just wisdom, to Matt's point. Right.
So, taking that concept of I can't be constantly evaluating moral aspects of everybody outside the church, what would your wisdom be?
Yeah.
Or when to confront a situation with somebody who's not? I know that's a nuanced question.
Yeah, it is. It's a great question, and I think we should all be fighting for wisdom there because I still am, and I will be till I die. If I could quote your dad, I think we should disciple everyone in our midst, even non-Christians. That's a really interesting way John has put it. And what did he mean by that? I should let him explain, but the way I heard it is there is a place to spread Christian wisdom to non-believers, to life advice based on the law of God, whether they believe in the law of God or not, and to say it. Now, you're not executing church discipline, of course. But if you're at the workplace and you hear someone struggling in their marriage, would that be a time to disciple them and say, hey, can you reach out to your wife? How could you start the conversation? This is important. Did you make vows, before? What did you say when you got married? Do you remember what you said? Does that matter to you? I mean, that's all kind of discipleship and so I think there's a place for it, but I think we all know there's places where you might say, yeah, I'm not going to say anything here. It won't be, well received. And what did Jesus say about that? Don't throw pearls to pigs or they'll turn and destroy you. And there is a place where you're like, all right, I don't say anything. Boy, can we use that to be chicken, though. So, yeah. Tim. Yeah.
And I think they should just always, these conversations should make everybody stop and think about where we're putting our decisions and how we're putting them out into society. Because we've talked about this in the church a lot, and you just talked about it. The church is given the keys, the government's given the sword.
That's right.
The rod, right?
Yep.
And so that's the jurisdiction that has been allotted out by God. And so when we vote based off of our faith,
Yeah.
for policies, there's an appropriate space for that, absolutely, and we're called to be in all spaces. But then you have to also consider: am I putting my faith? Am I putting the things that I have decided that I put myself into, and then putting the rod or the sword to other people who have not done that?
Yes.
And it just makes me think about
Yeah, that's a great. So some of you know, one of the things I'm starting here again is my dissertation. I'm going to try to finish my PhD. And it is on the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Is it biblical? And you're getting to it. Freedom of religion, which means freedom of what we would call heresy, or freedom to have no faith. Right? I believe people need Jesus to be saved. I'm a Jesus-loving fool. So do I want Christian things, enforced by the government? My answer to that is, which Christian things? Or what do you mean? And it's a longer answer, but to be honest, it's something like this. If somebody says outlaw abortion, I'm going to say yes, outlaw abortion. Why? Because somebody being killed is bad, all right? The government's supposed to protect innocent life. Where'd you get that? Well, from common sense maybe, but I got it from the Bible. Oh, you can't bring the Bible in. No, this is good for the good of society and all of that. I think it should be outlawed. I do. Now, you might not agree with me, but New Life has had a tradition of saying that. But if somebody says, yes, Moser, and now let us shut down one Buddhist temple down the street.